Hi, and welcome to another episode of It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim,
And I'm Jim.
and we're here to talk about racing. Going to start off with just a little bit of World of Outlaws news. Bill Balog, originally from Alaska and now here from Heartland, Wisconsin, picked up the win in the World of Outlaws race Friday at the Talladega Short Track. It's his second World of Outlaws win. His first one came almost 10 years ago at Beaver Dam Raceway here in Wisconsin. This is Bill's second year running full-time with World of Outlaws at age of 45. It was great to see him pick up the win. He's had 10 IRA 410 championships, so he knows how to wheel, and it was nice to see him get another win on the big stage. Moving to Supercross, they had the first East-West showdown. They do 3 of those a year where the best 250 riders from the East and the best 250 riders from the West get together and race.
You know, the showdown is really a great first chance for some of those 250 riders to show what they can do against a full field of competition. And I think it's always entertaining to see which side comes out on top.
It is. It's nice that they do that a couple times. I understand why they split the lower class up into East and West just for logistics, but it's nice to get them all together in the middle of the country and let them have at it. So they split them up separately. They have one heat race for the East and one for the West, and then the main is a free-for-all. The 250 West heat, Hayden Deegan got the whole shot, dominated, won it. Really wasn't much to talk about in that race except for Jet Reynolds. He did Hunter Yoder dirty. Just drove straight into him in a turn, front wheel to leg. It was ridiculous. Took him out, knocked him out of a transfer spot. Jet Reynolds then had the last and final transfer spot. He was written up after the incident, whatever that means, but he was given a official written warning not to be naughty, apparently.
Yeah, it was pretty egregious. I mean, we hate to see that happen. It was for the transfer spot in the heat race. Yoder was just riding along. Probably didn't even see him coming. It was from so far back. It reminded me a little old school Vince Freezy. And I don't like that kind of racing.
Good old Vince. I remember him getting punched in a few races.
Yeah.
In the 250 East heat, Max Anstey got the whole shot, held on, won the race. He had a good battle with RJ Hampshire near the end, but Anstey was able to win, so both heat race winners got the whole shots and the wins. In the last chance qualifier, Hunter Yoder won it after getting blown up by Jet Reynolds in his heat race. In the 250 main, Seth Hammaker got the whole shot, ran a really clean race. He won for the first time in over 4 years, so it's good to see another name up there. He had a good race last week and stepped it up even more this weekend and took care of business.
You know, it's good that he stepped up, especially because both of his Kawasaki teammates are out for the season.
Yeah, always good to show your team your value. So Hammaker won, Tom Vial second, and Hayden Deegan third. So what that does for points, the 250 East points, Tom Vial is winning. Max Anstey is 1 point behind. And then Hammaker, RJ Hampshire, and Nate Thrasher are 26, 30, 39 points behind. So really irrelevant at this point unless something happens to Vial or Anstey, which this is Supercross and stuff can happen any second. In the 250 West points, Hayden Deegan is still your points leader. Julian Beaumaire is 12 back, and then Cole Davies, Joe Shimoda, Cody Schock are also well over a race behind. But as I said, anything can happen in Supercross. In the 450s, Heat Race 1, Cooper Webb had the lead, crashed himself out in the sand section, handing the lead over to Justin Hill, and then Malcolm Stewart blew by Hill, with 2 minutes to go and pulled out to a 6-second lead. And he was just riding at the end. He wasn't trying. Otherwise, he would have won by 8 or 9 seconds. He had a really good ride in that heat race. In the second heat, Cowboy Plessinger got the whole shot, but that didn't last. Sexton quickly passed him, did not mess up. Chase Sexton did not crash himself in this heat race and showed what he can do and won by 8 seconds. In the 450 LCQ, we had Fredrik Noren. What's he, Swedish or something?
Yeah, I think he's from Sweden.
Yeah. He took the 450 last chance qualifier. 450 Maine. Justin Barcia got the whole shot. It was nice to see him doing good on that gas bike. But then Cooper Webb showed everybody who's still boss. Flew by, led pretty much the whole race, won by 8 seconds. He lapped all the way up to 9th place. He's definitely the class of the field this year. He's the only person who's got a chance is Chase Sexton, but as we've documented week after week, Sexton has to stop making mistakes, and otherwise this is Cooper Webb's race to win this year.
I mean, Webb doesn't do this often. Just kind of show the field who's boss, but I mean, when he does, you know why he's a 2-time champion already.
Yeah, in the points, Cooper Webb is winning. Chase Sexton is 15 behind, and Ken Roxon, Justin Cooper, Malcolm Stewart round out the top 5. The last 3 are over a full race behind. One other note, Joey Savacci had a hard crash, and he broke some ribs, didn't say how many, and punctured a lung, so won't expect to see him for a little while. Supercross is off this weekend. They are halfway through the season, so they do take the week off. Moving on to Xfinity. Alex Bowman, who shouldn't have been in the race in the first place, but that's my personal opinion, was on the pole. Led the whole first stage. Was it Anthony Alfredo had a fuel pump issue? Somebody had a fuel pump issue in the first stage. Pulled onto the pit road because the car was stalled out. Why did they have 10 caution laps for a car stalled on pit road?
I mean, Phoenix is a small track, but that seems excessive.
It's ridiculous. All you had to do was push him into his pit stall. I don't. NASCAR screws around so much with their pit procedures. They really need somebody to audit that, because 10 laps, they waste enough time running 5, 6, 7 laps after every stage under caution, but 10 laps for a car stalled that can probably get pushed by the crew members in 2 laps out of the way. It's just silliness to me. Anyway, I'll get back to business. The second stage, Austin Hill, he made a bonehead mistake. He bounced off the inside wall. You all know Phoenix. If you don't, there's no out of bounds. It's 6, 7, 8 wide racing, and there's one area where there's an inside wall, and then the wall goes away, and everybody tries to cut as close as they can, and Austin Hill couldn't cut it that close. So bounced off the inside wall, took out Dean Thompson and Sheldon Creed. Other than that, in the second stage, it was a real good race between Allgaier and Almirola. Allgaier did hang on to win the stage. Only thing, not a lot to note. Dawson Cram, he spun himself out about halfway through the third stage, so Jim here didn't get his green flag pit stops that he always enjoys. Nick Light spun into the wall with 3 to go, so he had a world-famous green-white checkers, which he also doesn't like. And Allgaier had the lead, got himself loose, lost it. Almirola drove Alex Bowman up into the outside wall, and Almirola won the race.
You know, I thought it was kind of interesting, Alex Bowman's interview post-race, because he was upset with Almirola for how he drove. And yeah, it wasn't the cleanest, but Bowman said that's not the way to win, and I just thought that was kind of ironic, seeing as he's a Cup guy who's won probably 10 races in Cup, who keeps coming down to Xfinity to win against the little guys. So that was kind of ironic to me.
All right, moving on to the Cup race. Got a couple updates from last week. Chase Briscoe won his appeal concerning the spoiler modification, which apparently was not a spoiler modification, even though it was a spoiler modification. So no fine, no crew chief suspension. He got his 100 points back. But Austin Cindric was fined $50,000 and docked 50 points for the right rear hook on Ty Dillon at Circuit of the Americas. NASCAR's reasoning for not suspending him, like they suspended, I believe, 2 drivers last year for the same move, was because it was at a road course. It was low speed. There's no wall. It's not like you're right rear hooking somebody at Daytona, which, you know, it can kill you. So I guess I understand that. It's nice to see them use a little brain power and a little judgment and not just have it be black and white where it's something like that. How do you feel about that? Or do you like black and white?
I like black and white. I didn't see the incident happen, so I can't say what I would have done. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'll concur with your assessment.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. Dillon pushed Cindric wide like everybody does at COTA just to get an advantage, and Cindric threw a little fit and hit Dillon once and then decided to spin him out. So anyway, on to the actual race. My favorite part of the race was they brought the soft tire. One of the few things that they brought from Formula One into NASCAR that I agree with. I don't agree with a lot of the NASCAR things trying to be Formula One. This I love because it just opens up so many different strategies. Now, if they would just get rid of the stages and other things, then I'd be all for it. But anyway, soft tires the first time this year. Also called the red sidewall tire or the alternate tire. William Byron was on the pole. Had a rough start to the race. It's like everybody forgot what they were doing. Or Catherine Legg never knew what she was doing. On lap 4, running all by herself and last, spun, brought out a caution. Lap 10 had some 6-wide shenanigans involving a bunch of cars. Everybody kind of bounced off each other, sideways, backwards, but I think everybody was able to continue out of that one. After that restart, Joey Logano, who was in the lead, dropped below the yellow line before he got to the start-finish line and was assessed a drive-through penalty, dropping him from first to last. He wasn't happy. It's a rule. It's black and white. And it was obvious in the replay from whatever angle you wanted to look at that he did drop down probably about 4 feet early. It didn't benefit him at all, but you have to have spatial awareness there. Ryan Preece, after the lap 10 caution, put the soft tires on, and he showed us what those things could do. He drove from 32nd up to 3rd after the restart on those soft tires. It was awesome. He was just blown by everybody. I loved it. It was almost like IMSA racing with multiple classes out there with those soft tires. It was pretty slick. But William Byron ended up winning the stage. Stage 2, about 40 laps in, there was a 11-car pile-up just because of more 4-wide, 5-wide silliness. Joey Logano this time put on the soft tires and drove up to the lead. And he really showed the whole field what they could do. He got about 60 laps on the soft tires before they dropped off. Christopher Bell passed him for the lead and won stage 2. In stage 3, just about everybody started on the red soft tires. Reason being is Logano just showed them they could go 60 laps, and the stage was about 120 something. So everybody had 2 sets of soft tires. Go soft if there's no cautions, and you can blow by anybody who didn't have them. But that didn't happen. because of course there were cautions. Catherine Legg once again spun by herself, 4 laps down, ended up taking out Daniel Suarez, who had some naughty things to say in the social medias, but that's that. Ryan Preece put the soft tires on again, ran back all the way up to the lead. Bubba Wallace blew a right front tire during the green flag stops, which it caught a couple cars a lap down. I think they were both Hendrick cars. I know it was William Byron, Chase Elliott. I'm not sure who else.
Yeah, I know Byron, he had pitted from the lead, and he was pretty upset about what happened because he did lose a lap.
But hey, good thing they have their wave around rule.
Yep.
So he was able to not go a lap down for long and was waved around to the tail of the field. About 22 laps to go. Ryan Blaney blew his motor. He had been telling the team that the motor was going to blow. Apparently nobody believed him, and then it finally went kapooey. That brought out a caution. I didn't see any fluid, but the way it was smoking, the NASCAR had to be on the safe side and throw the yellow. Ty Gibbs, who's had a really bad year this year, he blew a right front tire with 9 laps to go, which brought out a caution, and no green-white checkered, though. They threw the green with 3 to go, and that was the best 3 laps of the race, really. Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, they were all racing hard. Christopher Bell won it, his 3rd race in a row. He's dominating this year. He's by far the best. It's crazy how good Christopher Bell is. I mean, we always knew he was good coming from the dirt, but he's won 3 of the 4 races this year. He's got a 750 winning percentage.
The NASCAR points really don't matter until the playoffs start. But Christopher Bell, you'll find this interesting. He's not actually the points leader. He's won 3 of the 4 races, but he's 2nd place to William Byron at the moment.
Byron's got 1 win, right?
He does, but he also had a 27th place finish. So Christopher Bell's DNF, which was 31st, didn't really hurt him that much. It must be Byron's getting more of the stage
He
wins.
must be getting a lot of stage wins, which, I don't know. We won't argue about points in NASCAR because the show's going to be long enough because Jim's got his Formula One preview coming up here. One last thing I want to say is we had a Facebook poll. You can always find us on Facebook. It's Just Racing. And for Formula One, have you guys pick a champion. And there were 2 clear favorites. Max Verstappen, 53% of respondents picked Max to win the championship, and 26% with Lando Norris. So we're looking at what is that? 80% of the people between those 2. So that's all for me, and now you're going to listen to Jim talk for a long time about Formula One. So get your tea and get your crumpets, put on your blankie, and here we go.
All right, Formula One is back. The first of 24 rounds will start this weekend from Albert Park in Melbourne, Australia. It is a street circuit, and I know you don't like your street circuits, but as far as street circuits go, this one makes for some pretty good racing. There's space to pass. There's, I think, 3 DRS zones. It's a pretty good track overall. They've been going there for a long time. I want to just talk about each team and each driver just a little bit, because we do have a few driver changes and a lot of rookies this year. And then at the end, we're going to make our picks for champion, both for the driver and constructors, and for rookie of the year. So we're going to make 3 predictions.
I'm unprepared, but that's okay. I just go with my gut on these things anyway.
And we'll write these down at the end of the year. We'll see how wrong we were.
Okay.
Because that's the fun of it. So to start off, with just a preview of the teams and drivers, You've got Red Bull, as always. They finished third in the championship last year with 9 wins, all of those coming from Max Verstappen. They don't have the fastest car anymore. They had the fastest car. They had that very dominant year 2 years ago. And then last year, they started out good, and then the car, there were some problems with it. They had a couple DNFs. It just wasn't working for the drivers. Notably, they have lost Adrian Newey, who you may know as the Wizard, who makes their car the best aerodynamically. So we'll have to see what they've got this year. I mean, Max Verstappen is still driving for them. He's the 4-time defending champion.
He's the best driver on the grid. I still maintain that. He single-handedly he drove that car more than it should have been driven. Nobody could have gotten the results out of that Red Bull car last year that Max did. Yeah, so that's all I had to say. I just had to interject with my tiny little bit of Red Bull knowledge and Formula One knowledge, and Max is the best driver out there.
Well, and that's why it's really hard to set a benchmark for where the Red Bull car is, because wherever it is, Max is bringing it up probably, a second per lap past where it should be.
Well, and we saw that with Perez last year.
Yeah. He
was struggling to even get a top 10 on the same equipment.
But, I mean, Max, in those last 4 years, he's had 53 wins. And he already sits third on the all-time wins list. He really is at the peak of his game, and he is the best at the moment. He set the record for the most consecutive days in the championship lead, passing Michael Schumacher's previous record. So that is notable. He's looking to continue that streak. So he may not have the best car anymore, but you know that he's always going to be competitive. He's never given up a win. If he's got a chance to go for it, he's putting the car in that position. And his teammate this year, Red Bull, they moved on from Sergio Perez, and they're now going with Liam Lawson as their second driver. It's his second year. He got into the V carb about halfway through last year. He had some decent results. Nothing really stood out, but Red Bull needs someone to take a step up now and help be a good second driver for that team. The question that I have, that I guess we'll have to wait and see, is can he handle the pressure of being Max's teammate? I mean, Max, because he just doesn't make mistakes, he's really broken quite a few teammates. Notable teammates he's had include Daniel Ricciardo, Sergio Perez, Alex Albon, and Pierre Gasly.
I don't know if I'd say he's broken them.
I mean, he broke Checo for sure.
I don't think that Max broke Checo. I think the expectations that Max set broke Checo.
Yeah.
I wouldn't blame it on Max.
Well, I mean, when you're his teammate, you get in your own head,
right,
because it's hard to beat him. Moving on to Ferrari. Now, Ferrari, they had a very strong second half of the season last year. It wasn't quite enough to get the championship, but they did have just a little teaser of a battle with McLaren. And they're really hoping to continue that momentum. They've got a very strong driver lineup now. They've got Charles Leclerc, as always. He's coming off a 3-win season where he finished third place in the championship. He's been at the top before. The last time that someone other than Max was leading the championship, it was Charles in the beginning of 2022, I believe. So it's been a while, but he's been there before. He knows how to handle all those emotions and stay calm.
And he's a handsome fellow, isn't he?
I mean, I wouldn't know that, but...
Oh. He is.
Okay. I guess it could be said. But he's the golden boy for the Scuderia. He's been driving with them for years. He's looking for his turn as a champion. And he's partnered this year with Lewis Hamilton. And I know you've got mixed feelings about this, because we both really did enjoy seeing Carlos Sainz drive for Ferrari.
Yes.
And he did a really good job. But if you're Ferrari and you've got a chance to sign a 7-time champion, I mean, the winningest driver in Formula One history in Lewis Hamilton, it's hard to say no to that.
My problem was just the timing. I mean, they announced it before the season even started last year that they were bringing Lewis in and Carlos. Hey, you're fired, but come do your best all year long. That was my problem with it. I like Carlos. Lewis Hamilton is obviously a good driver. He's an old man now. We'll see what he can do. But that was my problem with it. Was just more of the timing than anything else.
I mean, Lewis, he had a bit of a bounce back season last year. He had a couple rough years after Max beat him for that championship in 21. But he had 2 wins last year. Now, of course, one of those was awarded to him when George Russell was disqualified, but he still had a good season. He's not, just the outright fastest anymore, partially because of age. He is 40 years old, which that'll slow you down. But he's still as sharp as ever. Any one race he can show you some prime Lewis Hamilton driving. And so you can never count him out. He's, by the stats, the best driver to ever race. I admit that I wasn't too sure about how I felt about the Ferrari move. The famous picture of him standing outside of Enzo Ferrari's house with the classic Ferrari, I think that really got me excited. I'm hoping that he does well this season. It is notably the first time in his racing career that he will be driving a car not powered by Mercedes. Of course, because he did start with McLaren, which used Mercedes engines. Speaking of McLaren, the champions from last year, their first championship since, I think, 1999. So it's been a long time. Andrea Stella, he's done a really fantastic job as team principal to really turn them around from where they were and bring them back to the top.
Now, just to clarify, that's constructor champion.
Yes.
Max is the actual champion. But for those of you who don't know Formula One, there's a driver's championship and a constructors championship for the team. So McLaren was the constructor or team champion last year.
Yes, they had 6 wins, and that was enough to bring them to that championship. And they, of course, have Lando Norris, who many of you picked as your title favorite for this year. I think he is coming into the season with the expectation of fighting for a championship. He finally broke through and got his first win. It had been a long time. People were starting to doubt if he could do it, but he did, and he won 4 races last year. I'm not sure if he's ready to win a championship yet. I guess we'll have to see. Maybe he'll prove us wrong. I'd like him to do well as a McLaren fan, so I'm cautiously optimistic. He is paired up with Oscar Piastri again. Both those young drivers. McLaren really seems to have the best driver lineup, at least headed for the future. I think Oscar, he got his first win last year along with a second one. He was a good number 2 driver. He still has to take a step up in saving a little tire for later in the race. He did tend to struggle towards the end with holding on to those tires.
See, and that's where I see a problem with McLaren this year. They've got 2 young, hungry drivers, and I don't think either of them wants to be a number 2. And when you say that Oscar's a good number 2 driver, I don't think in his head he's a number 2 driver. I think he's going to aggressively drive against Lando, and I think it's going to hurt them this season. But only time will tell.
I agree he is going to be aggressive, but one of my favorite things about Oscar Piastri is he seems to be a very level-headed driver. He doesn't let his emotions get the best of him. He makes smart decisions on the track, and I hope that he continues that put into this position.
But when he does that, what happens? Lando does get emotional and can lose his cool. So I think it'll be a fun one to watch. McLaren, on paper, they should win the Constructors' Championship if you want to look at it that way. But I think the inner turmoil will bubble at McLaren.
Well, that's the fun of Formula One. You race on the track, not on the paper. Moving on to Mercedes. Last year, they were a little inconsistent. They had flashes of their former brilliance. I think they had 4 wins total. But really, you weren't sure which Mercedes was going to show up week to week. And so that's continuing to be the question going into this season. Interestingly, this is the first season I found in Mercedes Formula One history that they've not had a world champion driving for them. Because they raced in 1955 and 56 with Juan Manuel Fangio and won both those championships. And then they had that long hiatus from the sport before coming back in 2010 with Michael Schumacher. And then when he retired for the second time, Lewis took over.
Gotcha.
So those are big shoes to step into for the two young drivers they've got now. George Russell, he's looked to as the team leader now. I think he feels he's ready for that, taking on more of that mentor role, but he also wants to fight for a championship, and he should be entering the prime of his career. So he looks to be poised to capitalize on any opportunity given to him. And he's going to be paired up with rookie Kimi Antonelli. Now people have been talking about him for years as a possible replacement for Lewis. And I mean, you can't really replace Lewis Hamilton. So it's going to be a lot of pressure on Kimi. I hope that, he's got good people around him who really help him grow. He's 18 years old. He was born in 2006.
Wow, little kid.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me feel old. But I mean, hopefully he, learns the car, gets some good results in, and doesn't have that pressure to have, immediate wins or podiums. And hopefully they just let him grow into the driver that everyone thinks he can become. Moving on to Aston Martin. We're going from no experience to the most experience. Fernando Alonso still driving for Aston. He's 43 years old. He'll be 44 this year.
We got two guys in their 40s this year. That's how I like it. Old men.
Now, Aston Martin as a team, they did regress a little bit last year. They had a good year 2 years ago, but then last year the pace just kind of fell off. They have hired Adrian Newey, but with how all the rules work in England, he wasn't allowed to start working for them until, I believe, the beginning of this month. So there's really not that much that he can do with this year's car. So I would expect him to focus on next year with the new regulations.
Now, I heard that they set up like a bedroom at the factory, and he's just going to live there working on the new car. Is that true?
I mean, I wouldn't doubt that. I know his wife made some social media post that was like, see you in 5 years. So the man is dedicated. I mean, he's got a lot to show for it. He's one of the greatest geniuses behind the scenes in Formula One cars.
And you know what Enzo Ferrari once said?
What's that?
Aerodynamics are for those who can't build engines.
Well, I mean, Newey's cars have beaten Ferrari for years now. So
with aerodynamics.
Fernando Alonso, however, he's been racing for longer than 6 of the current drivers have been alive. His debut was in 2001. So he actually started racing before I was born, too. So he's real old. He's got experience. He was actually in the middle of his second championship season with Renault when Kimi Antonelli was born. He did fade a little bit last year. He hasn't won a race since 2013. That's 12 years ago, if you're counting. So really, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Fernando this year. And as always, he is partnered with Lance Stroll, as his father, Lawrence Stroll, owns the team. That's all I've got to say about Aston Martin.
Yep.
Moving on to the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, who are called that again this year.
That's what I like to call them. You always call them V-Carb. I'm glad you used the full name.
Well, it's really a mouthful to say, so I'll probably say V-Carb a lot.
But Visa pays a lot of money for it to be called the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls.
Well,
but they don't pay us, so call them whatever you want.
Money can't buy you results, and they finished 8th in the Constructors' Championship last year. Really, they're still just the junior team for Red Bull.
No, they're not. They're a completely separate entity, Jim. What are you talking about?
Well, Yuki Tsunoda is back for them for the 5th year, and he's upset about that. He thinks he should have got that Red Bull seat. He's going to be looking to prove himself. I think if he's got a chance to pass Lawson in the race, he's going to be super aggressive.
He's going to wreck him. The kid's a hothead.
Yep.
Yuki Tsunoda is a hothead, and I think that's a big part of why he didn't get the seat in the first place. That's why he's not driving the Red Bull, is because he's unpredictable.
Yeah, I think Christian Horner would agree with you. But he's going to be paired up with Isaac Hadjar, another rookie, coming out of Formula 2. He finished second place in the Formula 2 standings last year. I don't know much about him. He did win 4 races in that series last year, and he's been promoted to fill the empty seat from Lawson's promotion. So he's kind of an unknown going into this year. Moving on to a team, this will probably be the last time you hear about them this year.
Hey, now.
Sauber is also participating.
Oh, yeah. I forget about them.
They're very slow. Last year, they scored 4 points in the entire year. That was all in one race. It was kind of lucky. Joe Guan Yu, who's no longer driving for them, broke through and got him like an 8th place or something. This year, they've got Nico Hulkenberg, who this is really a step down for him. I think he's going to be disappointed with the lack of pace he's going to find in this car. He's here because Audi is going to be taking over the team next year, and I think they wanted a German driver. So he's kind of in the twilight of his career. He's 37 years old. He had a good season last year. He's still a good driver.
And he knows what he's doing, and he brings experience, and I think for Audi it was a good move. I would hope they wrote him a fat check, because this year is really going to suck for Hulk. But in the overall scheme of things, I think that it was a good move for Audi to have Hulkenberg in the seat for 2026.
When I think he's going to be a bit of a mentor to the young Gabriel Bortoleto, who fills the 2nd seat. He's a young Brazilian driver. Nobody really knew him at the beginning of last year. It was his rookie season in Formula 2. To kind of get on everyone's radar, he won a race from last on the grid. I believe they start 24 in Formula 2. So he went 24th to 1st in a race.
Oh, Max hasn't even done that.
Not yet, at least. And he ended up winning the Formula 2 championship and being promoted, if you can call driving for Sauber a promotion.
It's probably a bigger paycheck.
Probably. He was voted the FIA Rookie of the Year across all series that the FIA governs last year. And so people are excited about him, and it'll be interesting to see if he can do anything with what he's been given.
I hope there's no expectations out of him with the equipment he'll be riding in.
Speaking of low expectations, moving on to Alpine, the French car. Pierre Gasly's driving for them again. It's been about 5 years since his only win in Formula One. He wants to drive at the front. He said this before. That's why he joined Alpine, because he thought he had a better shot at driving towards the front with them. That hasn't really worked out for him. He's a good driver, but he's impatient. So that's kind of his downfall, especially given the car that he's in. He's going to be paired with Jack Doohan, at least for a little while. They've already said that if Doohan doesn't perform, they're going to replace him, which you got a rookie who's never driven in Formula One before, and he's in a bad car. And, like, what kind of confidence is that going to take away from him?
It's ridiculous. It's way too much pressure. They've already hired his replacement, Cole Pinto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine you're going into your job, and your replacement has already been hired, and they've told you your replacement has already been hired, so you better go out there and do better than anyone has ever done at your job. It's ridiculous. I feel really bad for the kid. It's just a bad way to go, but that's how they work at Renault. I mean, Alpine. It's not a good business model, not how you treat people. But that's just me being an emotional old man thinking this kid's career's over already.
Moving on to Williams. Williams has a pretty good lineup this year. Unfortunately, they don't have the car to go with that, but they're hoping that they can improve. Carlos Sainz, after his 3 seasons, I believe, with Ferrari, he's had to take a big step back and move down to Williams. It was unfortunate there wasn't another seat that opened up for him, but he seems to be making the best with what he's got. He's been saying he wants to... He's been realistic. He knows he's not going to fight for podiums, but he wants to bring Williams back to the top and do whatever he can to help them get back there.
He's just got to score points every week, and hopefully teach him something.
Yeah, and Alex Albon is still with Williams as well. And notably, he did struggle a little last year when he was paired with Colapinto, which may have just been because he wasn't used to having a competitive teammate. So we'll see how he handles that this year. Hopefully they can work together. I think it could be a good driver pairing. They're both former Red Bull drivers. Really what they need to do for Williams is to cut down on the damage. Last year, they won the unofficial the World Destructors Championship, some people call it. They caused about $13 million in damages, which really hurt the development of this car. Hopefully not too much, but I guess we'll see. Speaking of crashing into things, well, I suppose that's not fair. Well, we'll move on to Haas. Not specifically Haas. The first driver I'm going to talk about for Haas is Esteban Ocon, because he's a very polarizing driver. He has talent. He always seems to get into little fights with his teammates, always crashing into the team cars, which is not a good thing to do.
Not at this level, not at any level.
I think we were both really surprised that Haas let Kevin Magnussen go, who is probably the best teammate, to get Esteban, who is the worst.
You know, K-Mag and Hulk, that was a great pairing. I was rooting for Haas every weekend. It was great to see the American team have two likable guys, and now they've got Esteban.
Well, they still have one likable young driver, Ali Behrman. He's going to be driving for Haas. Hopefully he can overcome any teammate troubles that might occur from being teammates with Esteban. He subbed for Carlos Sainz when he was out with his appendicitis. So he raced for Ferrari one time last year, and he scored points on debut. I think that, he's got to, temper his expectations a little bit and not expect points, every week, because Haas is a midfield team. So I think with some work, he can be scoring points, getting good results, but he's just got to make sure he's not expecting too much off the get-go. And then I guess that brings us to our predictions.
Oh, boy.
I'll go first, so you have a little time to think. For the Rookie of the Year, I have to go with Kimi Antonelli.
Ooh, good. I had one picked. Ali Behrman.
All right. Now, we won't be judging this at the end of the season based solely off of points, just because the car's a Mercedes and a Haas. You really can't compare that. We're probably going to do it based on how well they do compared to their teammate.
Okay.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure something out. You will. You're the stat master.
Now, for champions, I'm going to go with constructors first, because I think that we might pick the same team. I think that it's finally Ferrari's year.
You are dead right on there, son.
I mean, they have not won a championship since, I think, Kimi Räikkönen in 2007 would have been their last. They won the Constructors maybe in 2008, but it's been a long time for Ferrari. They've been desperate to get back to the top. They've got the car to do it. They have the drivers to do it.
Yeah, between Lulu and Charles, I think there will be give and take on the track. I don't think we're going to have any of the infighting we'll see on some other teams. I don't even know that it's going to be much of a challenge. I think Ferrari's gonna walk away with the Constructors' Championship, and they're actually a constructor, so I can say that.
Yep.
My biggest problem with that term is there's 3 engine manufacturers?
Soon to be 3. There's currently 4. Alpine is in the last year of manufacturing its own engines.
Okay. So I think there's only 4 constructors, but each team is called the constructors, so I won't get into that. But yes, a real constructor, Ferrari, will win.
And, of course, what everybody wants to know, the driver's champion. I mean, I think that Charles Leclerc, I think it's going to be a close fight between him and Max. I see Charles winning 7 races this year, and I think Max will win 5. And I think Ferrari, the car is just going to be the difference in that. And I think that Charles will win his first championship this year.
I want to agree with you. It's hard. I still think Max is the best driver. I think that Leclerc having a quality tier 1 teammate is really going to help, because he'll be able to keep Ferrari up 1-2 and have Max finish third when they're in a situation like that where a lot of times you don't have that, other than when you had McLaren doing it. But I'm going to be a contrarian. I am going to say Lewis Hamilton will win the championship. I don't know why. I like to be different than Jim here. I can't just copy everything he says, because then it would look like I was just trying to, cheat on the test off the smart kid here. But I'm going to go with Lewis. I like Ferrari, been a Ferrari fan for a long time. And I guess I'm just going to go with Lewis because I can't pick Leclerc. But I really want to pick Max, so I might change. Should I pick Max?
I mean, it's your pick.
I'm going to go with Max Verstappen to win his 5th straight championship in Formula One and then retire.
All right. Well, there you have it. You'll have to tune in at, 11 p.m.?
11 p.m. Central. That's 11 p.m. for us for the race in Australia. Next week, no Supercross. There is NASCAR, all 3 series. The trucks are finally racing again. They will all be in Vegas. Formula One races again next week, right?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay.
Along with the 12 hours of Sebring this week.
All right. So he'll have the crazy turning left and right updates. I'll take care of the circle track stuff. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, just drop us a comment. And thanks for listening.